This is heaven. This exclamation was given to me and to Kendra by a complete stranger as we bumped into her on an outdoor trail at Mohonk Mountain House in New York State last week. We were walking under a blue sky and a bright sun on the Eagle Cliff Trail, a trail that snakes along the top of massive cliffs that drop down into a spring-fed lake below. A trail that affords a view of the Skytop Tower, an old rock tower that sits across the lake atop even taller cliffs. A trail lined with mature trees and flowering bushes. A trail that provides views of the entire Hudson Valley as it rolls out around you. This is heaven, she said. She explained that she had just gotten back from Florida, staying her family's house in Florida from January through May. I hate Florida, she says. I grew up in this area, she said. I grew up walking this trail, she said. I'm so glad to be back on this trail. This is heaven, she said. Well, what did she mean by that? Well, let's consider her worldview. On the one hand, there was Florida. And in her worldview, Florida was not heaven. Now, I know there's disagreement about this morning in this robust audience of ours. Some of us feel like, no, those warm waters, those white sands, that great seafood, that magic kingdom, that's heaven. But let's stay with her worldview. In her worldview, that was not heaven. On the other hand, there was where we were at this moment, this picture taken from almost the very spot where we bumped into her, looking back across this lake, down these cliffs. For her, this was heaven. There was something sacred about this place, something divine about this place. There was something about this place that resonated with her spirit, resonated with her soul, that seemed divine to her. And I would say after spending a couple of days in this same place that I might agree with her. These are a few of the pictures that I took as we walked around this place. This is heaven. I understand why she said those words. I wonder about you. I wonder if you have a place that you feel that way about. You know, maybe it's a family cabin or house in New Hampshire or Maine. Maybe it's somewhere in the mountains in Colorado or Canada. Maybe it's a beach in Colombia or Barbados. Maybe it's the place where you grew up. Maybe it's the place where you hope to retire. And for you, there's something about that place that resonates with something deep in your soul. There's something sacred, divine about that place. And almost every place else feels a little bit less than heaven to you. A little bit later this summer, wildfires permitting, we're hoping to make a drive up to Quebec City. And one of the places that we want to visit is this Basilica of St. Anne. It's one of 8 national shrines in Canada. It's about 20 miles east of Quebec City. And there's something about large church buildings like this that for many of us evoke a sense of sacredness, a sense of the divine, that when we move into those spaces, we feel like we're glimpsing part of heaven. And architects and artists labor to evoke that sense for us, so that as we draw near to spaces like this, and we enter spaces like this, somehow we do feel a little bit closer to God. That there are these spaces that to us feel divine and sacred, and every other place feels just a little bit less so to us. And when we're in them, we feel like, yes, this is heaven. Which brings us to Psalm 99. This morning is our final in this series of the enthronement psalms. There are other enthronement psalms, but we're stopping with Psalm 99. Next Sunday, Josh Rader Lee from the Forefront Church in Brooklyn will be preaching for us on unity and diversity, a theme that fits the month of June. And then the following Sunday, 2 weeks from today, we'll begin a new series on the book of Acts, Acts 1 through 15, exploring especially the role of the Holy Spirit in the early church. And that series is called This is Water. But this morning we finish up this series in Psalm 99. It is an enthronement psalm, but it's written to tell us something about the God who is enthroned. It's written primarily to announce that the God who reigns is a God who is holy. And we notice that mentioned 3 times in the psalm. Verse 3, let them praise your great and awesome name. Holy is He. Extol the Lord our God, verse 5. Worship at His footstool. Holy is He. And then verse 9, extol the Lord our God and worship at His mountain, for the Lord our God is holy. Holy, holy, holy. The psalmist is saying, the one who reigns, the one who's enthroned, the God that we call King, the one whom we trust is in charge of everything, is holy. Now, what does it mean to say that He is holy, holy, holy? The word holy has a number of meanings. It's multi-layered. And this morning, I just want to look at one meaning of the word holy. The word holy refers to the fact that God is thoroughly, completely sacred, divine, heavenly. At its most fundamental meaning, that is what the word holy means. It simply refers to the fact that God is thoroughly in this category of heavenly, divine, and sacred. And so this draws on a worldview that was very common in the ancient world, a worldview that we see reflected in the Psalms, a worldview that we hear from this stranger that we bumped into on this trail. In the ancient world especially, there were just 2 categories of people and places and things and gods and goddesses. There was heaven, what was sacred, what was divine, and there was everything else. In the Old Testament, this is called common or profane. This worldview is represented throughout, especially the Old Testament. And of course, what people in the ancient world wanted is what we want. They and we want some sense of the sacred, some sense of the divine, some sense of heaven. And it was hard to get, especially in religion in the ancient world. I mean, just think about what you know about some of the gods and goddesses of, say, the Romans or, say, the Greeks. Most of those gods and goddesses were as violent as humans were. They were as prideful and arrogant as humans were. They were as deceptive as humans were. Most of the gods and goddesses in the ancient world seemed to have just been magnified versions of the worst parts of ourselves. There was hardly anything divine or sacred about them. And in that context, the psalmist and others use the word holy. The word holy is used to say there is a being, there is a God, the God, Yahweh, our God, who is thoroughly and completely and unreservedly in that category. In fact, he is the only one who is 100% in that category, and all else remains outside of it. So that if we are in relationship with that God, if we are in the reign of that God, we are now saying, yes, this is heaven. Stevie Smith is a poet in the UK. She's written a poem called Heavenly Cities. She says, I sigh for the heavenly country where the heavenly people pass and the sea is as quiet as a mirror of beautiful, beautiful glass. I walk in the heavenly field with lilies and poppies bright. I am dressed in a heavenly coat of polished white. When I walk in the heavenly parkland, my feet on the pasture are bare. Tall waves the grass, but no harmful creature is there. At night I fly over the housetops and stand on the bright moony beams. Gold are all heaven's rivers, and silver her streams. I sigh for the heavenly country. She's tapping into this deep longing that we all at some times feel. This deep longing that feels like it is addressed when we are in these special places or with these special people. And what the psalmist is telling us is that God is the ultimate fulfillment of that sigh, because he alone is holy. He is that heavenly country for which we sigh. God alone is holy, holy, holy. God alone is the fullness of that taste that woman on that trail had as she was walking that day. God alone is the full volume of the whisper we receive when we too stand in these special places or with these special people who make us feel heavenly. That's what the psalmist means when he calls God holy. And the good news of this is what follows from it, that if the God who reigns is holy, 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 it follows then that his reign is also holy, holy, holy. That what God is doing as he reigns, what God is doing as he expands his influence over all whom he has made in every corner of creation, is to make those places and people all the more heavenly and sacred and divine, so that eventually all of creation might sense that heaven has come to earth. You might remember this song if you're old enough, 1988. It was up for a Grammy Award, Belinda Carlisle, thinking about a very special person in her life and how that relationship became a sense of heaven on earth. When I feel alone, she sang, when I reach for you and you bring me home, when I'm lost at sea, I hear your voice and it carries me. In this world, we're just beginning to understand the miracle of living. Baby, I was afraid before, but I'm not afraid anymore. Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. They say in heaven, love comes first. We'll make heaven a place on earth. Oh, heaven is a place on earth. And ultimately, that's what Psalm 99 is saying to us. That's the good news that it's bringing to us. There is a being who exists in the fullness of that heavenly, sacred, divine realm. It is Yahweh. It is the Lord God of hosts, who is holy, holy, holy. And his reign means that in small and big ways, he too is bringing that heaven on earth, so that all of creation might be able to eventually say, this is heaven. And it is that very thing that Jesus teaches us to pray in his Sermon on the Mount. Pray along these lines, Jesus says, Our Father in heaven, we honor your holy name. We ask that your kingdom will come now. May your will be done here on earth just as it is in heaven. Jesus says, as you pray, remember that the one to whom you pray is holy, holy, holy. He alone is hallowed. He alone is sacred and divine and heavenly. And then pray for that reign, for that kingdom to come, that will to be done here on earth as it is in heaven. And as God's people pray that, all of creation begins to experience in greater and greater ways that this is heaven. I want to invite you to take just a few seconds right now and to think back over the last week, the last 7 days, and to consider a moment where, because of the holy God who reigns, because of his kingdom coming in your world and your life, you experienced a bit of heaven on earth.
The Lord reigns. Let the peoples tremble. He sits enthroned upon the cherubim. Let the earth quake. The Lord is great in Zion, over all the peoples. Let them praise your name. Holy is he. Holy, 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 holy is he. Holy, 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 holy is he. Holy, holy, holy is he. Holy, holy, holy. The King in his might loves justice. Exalt the Lord and worship at his feet. Moses, Aaron, and Samuel among them called to the Lord. You a forgiving and avenging God to them. in the pillar of the cloud. Holy is He. Holy, holy, 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 holy is He. Holy is He. Holy is He. Holy is He.